Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here, taking a look at the Grade 2 San Felipe. It is race 8 on a stakes-packed Saturday card at Santa Anita. Before we get into the analysis, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel to get more videos like this. And also, drop us a comment if you agree, disagree with our take on Barnes or any of the other horses we're going to talk about in this San Felipe field. Mike, only 6 entered for this race. 6 probably more entries than some expected to get. Bob Baffert did enter 3 of them. Unsurprisingly, we can't get any scratches if we want the full Kentucky Derby qualifying points to be allotted for this race, because with those new rules, less than 6, and those points will start to be reduced. But Baffert does have the 3 in here, including the 2 main players, Barnes and Rodriguez, the former one of the early favorites for the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, Baffert got a couple of, it seems like he's got a couple of his good ones in here, and I'm sure he's really hoping that this field stays intact. So they can get the points that they need. It's going to be interesting too. David Barnes is like sort of the hyped one, the expensive one, and he's been really good so far. But Rodriguez, he's the fastest one, at least at this point.
Let's not give short shrift to the number 2 Journalism, not going out for the Baffert barn, but also a horse that has attracted some buzz based on what he did during his 2-year-old season. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this race, Mike. And you see 3 horses across the track up front, but let's keep in mind the number 1, 3, and 4 are all going out for the Bob Baffert barn. So once again, Bob Baffert's going to be able to choreograph this pace scenario.
Yeah, it really does make these races at least a little bit challenging. You're never really 100% sure which one is going to go to the lead. All 3 of them seem like they're fast enough to get there, if that's what the design was pre-race. So we'll see how they decide to play it. I'd kind of be surprised if they got conservative with Barnes in this race, but we'll see.
Yeah, it does feel like so often post position dictates these tactics, and Barnes drawing inside of Rodriguez might just naturally put him on the lead, so both were able to complete the race with clean faces, in theory. Let's go through this field from the rail out, beginning with the outsider among that Baffert trio, the number 1 Mellencamp. He is still a maiden coming into this race, Mike. He's actually faced off against today's rival Journalism in all 3 of that one's races. Finally got away from Journalism last time, but caught a pretty good maiden breaker in the well-bred Baeza. Was no match for that foe. Just feels like he's in here to make this race go with the maximum number of points.
It does kind of feel that way too. I mean, to me, the best race he's run so far is his debut, and that's the only time they sprinted him. He ran really well that day, even though he didn't win. He hasn't necessarily gotten better since they stretched him out. So we'll just see if this is actually the right kind of race to be running him. I think there's something there with this horse, David. This probably isn't the right spot.
The number 2 is Journalism, who took big strides forward in each start as a 2-year-old. Clearly did not really want to sprint on debut, where he was closing behind Mellencamp, as well as today's rival Smooth Cruisin', but came back and took a big step forward going the 2 turns. Then last time won the Los Alamitos Futurity. We'll take a look at the replay of that race. And you know, Mike, when I first saw this race last year, I was not thrilled by it. But in retrospect, this might be turning out to be a better race than I initially gave it credit for, because the runner-up Getaway Car came back to improve his Bayard by 10 points next time, winning the Sunland Derby. And even the 3rd and 4th place finishers, one of which was Mellencamp, came back to improve their Bayards by 20-plus points next time. So perhaps this 87 Bayard that Journalism got in victory was a little bit conservative, and you had to like the way he finished off this race for his prospects to get further distance down the line.
I agree. You have to like the way he finished both of his wins since they stretched him. I have to like the way that he's, in particular, the way he finished those races off. He really stays strongly. And so that's a real feather in his cap. But I just like the fact that, you know, the Los Alamitos, I'm with you, David. When I first watched it, I didn't like it that much. And I will just say, as far as Journalism's trip in that race goes, this one's going to be a lot different for him. I'll be interested to see how he deals with it, because that was just a race where they didn't go that fast, and they just sort of went progressively faster as the racing picked up. So he was just able to sit up close and then just put his stamina to the test there. He was just way better than those horses once they really started running. They're going to go faster early in here. And so we'll just see how he deals with that. I mean, he did kind of show, though, when he broke his main, that he can sort of sit off a pace and still run.
Yeah, he's not that slow. He's got tactical speed. He travels well, and you can watch a lot of workout videos for these horses with them being based in Southern California. And some of his recent workouts do have that wow factor, especially his drill 2 back on February 16th. So it appears that he's grown up for his 3-year-old debut. Number 3 is Barnes, and I think he's likely to be the favorite in this race. He's considered one of the early favorites for the Kentucky Derby, even though he's never gone 2 turns before, and he'll be stretching out for the first time. We'll take a look at his last race when he won the San Vicente, going the 7 furlong distance. And Mike, this was one of these races where there was another potential speed from the Baffert barn that was clearly rated to
Yeah.
allow Barnes to have a soft opening quarter this day, but you still had to like the way that he put this field away through the stretch. Bullard was kind of the co-favorite in this race, and he could never match this horse's finishing kick as Barnes just draws away in the lane. Got a 93 buyer here. He's going to have to continue to run faster to be considered a serious Kentucky Derby threat, but he is another horse that has just been training lights out coming into this race.
Yeah, I guess the one, sort of, if you want to call it a negative about the San Vicente last time was you just didn't really find out anything about Barnes in there because they just let him get away with such an easy pace. And of course, he just powered through the stretch there. He did look good finishing it off, but he had such a soft trip in there. I just don't think you really learned anything about him. I would say if you really want to try to get an idea of the talent this horse has, I would say go back and watch his debut at Churchill. I know he was a really short price. I know he barely got up that day. To me, he ran great in there in a race where that kind of trip that he pulled in there gets a lot of horses beat. And the way that he was just sort of unfazed by all of it and still got the job done, to me, it pointed him out as a horse who has some real ability.
Yeah, I'm still not sure he's a mile and a quarter horse
Yeah.
based on what we've seen so far, but he doesn't have to be to win this race on
Right.
Saturday. The number 4 is Rodriguez, and he's kind of the main rival from the Bob Baffert stable facing stablemate Barnes. And, this horse clearly was not ridden that aggressively last time in the Robert B. Lewis when he was facing another one of Bob Baffert's top Derby prospects, last year's 2-year-old champion Citizen Bull. We'll take a look at just the stretch run of that race, but that's a replay you might want to go back in Formulator and Timeform US and watch the entirety of, because Rodriguez lost some position on the backstretch when he was put in that spot between horses not aggressively ridden to contest the pace along with Citizen Bull. Made a nice move around the far turn and just kind of flattened out at the end, Mike. He was way more impressive when they were aggressive with him too back.
Yeah, he was. I mean, it's interesting too, David, because in both of his losses, he's run well. In the 2 losses, he ran well both times. And they just didn't get aggressive with him at all in either of those races. When you watch this horse too, he's really good from the gate. He really breaks the gate sharply. And for whatever reason, they just don't always go with him. The one time they did go with him was that win that we just looked at where he just dominated that field on the lead. It'll be interesting to see how Pratt plays this. He's going to ride him for the first time here. This horse breaks sharply from the gate. I'll be interested to see if Pratt takes a hold of it.
The 2 drawn on the outside are both going to be bigger prices. The number 5, Smooth Cruisin', did win his debut at a big price and ran very well that day, overcoming a tough start. But, Mike, this is a horse that has had trouble getting out of the gate now in both career starts, and stretching out around the 2 turns, that's not an attribute that I love to see.
I agree. I mean, listen, this is a horse who he was the longest shot on the board when he broke his maiden. He did basically everything wrong in that race, and he still won. I mean, I thought he actually ran really, really well that day. They tried him in the San Vicente last time. He could never get involved.
And then on the outside is the California-bred Berlin Wall, who broke his maiden via disqualification last time when they made a decision to take down a horse that had an infraction at the start that beat him. I don't know what you think about that, Mike. Doesn't really matter as it pertains to this race, but Berlin Wall was finishing well at the end and does strike me as a horse that will eventually appreciate added ground, just probably not at this class level.
Yeah, he might be interesting in another spot when they decide to give him a little more ground to work with. This doesn't feel like the right spot.
Let's throw up our picks for this San Felipe. And Mike, Baffert's going to be tough to beat, and I see you are not trying to go against him with Barnes on top.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to have any money invested here, David. I'll just take Barnes on top here. I did think Rodriguez was a little bit interesting. If they go way overboard on Barnes, I think Rodriguez is interested in here.
I put the number 2 Journalism as my top pick. I just feel like maybe his price will drift up a little bit if the 2 Baffert trainees take so much attention. And I really like the way he progressed during his 2-year-old season. And it feels like he might have taken a physical step forward for his 3-year-old debut. So 2, 3, 4, 6 for me and 3, 4, 2, 5 for Mike in the Grade 2 San Felipe on Saturday. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.